What is going on, everyone? Anthony Drew Gary here, host of the How To Show, where we talk about optimizing life, money, and happiness one how-to at a time. And this week on the show, we are going to talk about whether or not it makes more sense to rent versus buy. And I see this in different online communities, different Reddit pages, different Facebook groups, etc., trying to have a one-size-fits-all solution for this. And even though I am a real estate broker and I would love to help you buy a house, I'd love to help you sell a house, it doesn't always necessarily mean that it's in your best interest to do either one of those. And so the way that I like to frame this idea is not so much whether you can afford a house, whether or not you can afford a rent of a certain metric or whatever you have in your situation there. It's basically, what's your life look like? And so the way that I think about this is in no less than 5-year increments, really. And so, I can think, if I just chunk out my life so far in different 5-year increments, in some of them it makes absolutely zero sense to even think about buying a house, those college years, different things like that. The next phase of life, maybe it looks a little more secure in terms of geography. Maybe it looks a little less secure, and you've got to really shape out whether or not you plan to be in one location for enough amount of time to make the ancillary costs of home ownership worthwhile for you. And this is anywhere from originating your mortgage to just the different incremental costs that you might find yourself in along the way. You could find yourself in a house, and within a short amount of time you could have yourself some hefty repairs that would not necessarily happen annually, biannually, triannually, whatever the case may be. But you have an unexpected repair at the HVAC level, or maybe at the roof level, maybe you need windows replaced, etc., etc. You could find yourself in a situation where, if you were only looking to be in an area for a couple of years and you bought yourself a house, you could get essentially stuck with some costs that maybe would have had you thinking, man, I should have just rented a place for a little while. And I would still suggest that those costs would be part of the discussion for you, because realistically, whether or not you're renting or you're buying, you're paying the same general cost. You're paying the principal and interest, you're paying the taxes, you're paying the insurance, you're paying some level of maintenance. And if you are thinking that if you are renting, you are not going to be paying for any maintenance, that is a falsehood, really. You're just paying it over a generous amount of time. And so, if somebody is leasing a house or somebody's leasing an apartment community, a certain percentage of that rent is held back in an operating, basically, capacity to make sure that when those roofs and those windows and those HVAC units all need to be replaced, that there's money to do that. And so I really do think the best way to look at this is in 5-year increments. If you're not thinking that you are going to stay in place for at least the next 5 years, it probably makes sense to find yourself something temporary to rent. And then the next step to that is, if you are going to stay in place for the next 5 years, are you going to be able to secure the proper size of housing that it still makes sense to be in 5 years later? And so statistically, I best I could find, somebody who buys their first home is living in that house for somewhere between 5 and 7 years, which is fascinating because, we've got these mortgage products that are 15, 20, 30-year mortgages, and statistically, nobody pays those off. Very interesting situation, part of our finance system that a good portion of the economy is built on, but realistically, you're not locking yourself in to live there for 15 years or 20 years or 30 years. But you probably ought to be considering living in that house for at least 5 years to make sure that if you needed to dispose of that house and get it on the market and sell it, that the transaction costs involved with all of the above wouldn't have put you in a situation where it would have maybe been cheaper for you to rent a place. And so this is the type of things that I'm thinking about when I'm going through this. The other piece to this is that if you do buy a house, you want to be thinking about the 2-year mark. And what this practically means is this is an exclusion in the IRS code that allows you to capitalize on any gains that you might have over that time if you are living in a house for 2 out of the last 5 years. And so basically this is up to $250,000 if you're a single person, up to $500,000 if you are a married filing, however I believe, situation, that married folks, to sell your house at a profit and not have to pay any capital gains on that that gain of whatever you sold it for versus what you bought it for. And so we're thinking about that as well. We're really just looking at this, what phase of life are you in? What phase of life do you expect to be in? And is a housing solution available to you that is permanent enough that it makes sense both in the short term and in the long term? And so if you are thinking about this, which you probably are, because most people think about their housing every year or two. Maybe you want to move up in house, maybe you want to move down in house, maybe you want to move out of a house into some sort of rental capacity, maybe you want to move from some sort of a rental capacity into a house. I can help you with all of the above. Get in touch with me in the comments or at indiedwell.com, and I can do that anywhere in the greater Indianapolis market and probably help you anywhere else in Indiana as well. If you've got any feedback or any comments to stew on as we're thinking about these different ideas, leave them in the comments. I will respond to each and every one of them as always. And you can subscribe to the show, be the first to know about new content each and every Wednesday, and you'll also get the short form funnies that I post almost every day, just to keep things fun, lighthearted, all of the above. Until next time, this is Anthony Drew Gary, host of The How To Show, signing off.